actually was never in Side by Side. But I was
shit.
probably at every single one of their shows.
Oh shit. Hang on a second. So you wanted to, okay, one second. Hang on. I'm going to do this again because I fucked up. Hang on a second. Welcome to the One Life One Chance podcast. I'm your host, Toby Morris. I have a special guest today. He's been in bands like the Young Republicans, Violent Children, Judge, Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits, Project X, Bold, Shelter, and Last of the Famous. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy list. It's such a resume, man. Fuck.
I know. I don't have much else of a resume. It's like, 30 years of punk rock.
So,
and I teach a little yoga too.
Yeah,
my resume.
Dude, if people don't know, I'm talking to Porcell right now. We'll do his Instagram later, but my man is in the best shape ever. He's 50 years old and he's shredded. Actually, you've always been shredded. Ever since I've known you, you've always been in good shape your whole life, which is pretty awesome. You've always stayed healthy and shape, for sure.
Well, I tell you, I made it a priority. And, health is important, man.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have health, I see people 20 years younger than me, and they just let themselves go. And it's sad to see.
It is. It's like, it's super important, especially for punk rockers and people that do music, because we don't have retirement plans or 401ks. Some of us don't even have medical insurance. So it's like, you got to take care of your body to stay away from going to the doctors and stuff,
My medical insurance is yoga every day and a healthy diet.
Yeah, you've always been.
That's my sure.
Have you always been like that, even as a kid? I mean, let's go back to that. Let's go back to you, and let's go back to a young version of you. Were you born in New York or Connecticut?
I was born in New York. I grew up in Westchester.
Nice.
I was born in New Rochelle. And, when I was a kid, I mean, I ate the worst diet ever. I mean, I grew up like, in 80s kid, I grew up on like Captain Crunch and double stuffed Oreos and, my parents were divorced.
Yeah.
My parents were divorced. So my dad used to take me and my brother to the supermarket.
Yeah.
And he'd just be like, get whatever you want.
Damn.
You tell like a 14-year-old kid, get whatever you want. I'm getting like 5 boxes of cereal, a couple of gallons of ice cream. So I didn't really start to, it's just how like me and my friends lived.
Yeah.
Eating hamburgers every night, microwaving stuff. I had like no clue that what you ate affected your health.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't come until later.
Yeah.
Thanks to hardcore, really. I mean, thanks to, moving to New York City, getting into like this music scene, just moving to New York City, there's so many different ideas start to bounce off of you. It's like, I grew up in this kind of like small town in Westchester, and it's very closed, and you live like, you live one way, and you don't even know that there's other ways to live out there. So, really, when I moved to the city, I started getting a lot of different ideas just about music and life and food and health, and I was lucky to do it because I was young when I did it.
Yeah, how old were you when you moved there?
I was 19.
So did you do good in high school and stuff like that and graduate, of course, and all that before?
I did. I got straight A's in high school.
Wow.
I went to, and it was funny too, because my brother, he didn't really do too great in school. So my dad's, was really like thinking that I was going to be the one that was going to make it in college.
Yeah.
And so when I did, when I told my dad that I wasn't going to go to college and I was going to do my hardcore band full time and go on tour, damn, dude, he didn't really take kindly to that.
Yeah, it was rough.
But hey, that's the best decision I ever made.
Mm-hmm. So you graduated then, and then how long after that you moved to New York? So shortly after that you moved to New York, huh?
I didn't graduate. I only went to college for a year.
Oh, okay.
And even when I went to college in Oswego, SUNY Oswego, and I was obsessed with hardcore. Like I couldn't study. I couldn't I just couldn't get into it. I remember I had one of my finals, and I went and I took the bus all the way to Albany to see Suicidal Tendencies.
Oh, shit, it's awesome.
And I came back so late that I couldn't even go and take a shower. So I walked in 45 minutes late to my final, dressed like freaking sweaty ass punk rocker. And the guy just looks at me and he's like, "Here's the test. You're probably going to fail it." And I aced it.
Wow. That's
awesome. It's just like, but I really couldn't get into school. We were doing Youth Today. On my Christmas break, we did our first West Coast tour with 7 Seconds with Kevin Seconds playing drums.
Really?
Once you do something like that, on our Christmas break, the first show we played was New Year's Eve in Reno.
Oh, wow.
And our drummer, a week before, our drummer said, "I don't want to do it." We're like, "What, are you kidding? This is like a dream come true." 7 Seconds were literally my favorite band.
Yeah.
And so we told Kevin, we're like, "We can't do it." He goes, "Don't worry, I'll play drums for you. Come out 3 days early and we'll practice in my garage."
That's amazing. I didn't even knew that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. Kevin Seconds played drums for us.
Wow. So what got you into that? Like, how'd you find hardcore? Like, why'd you fall in love with it so much?
I got into punk. First of all, I was always obsessed with music.
Yeah.
Always. Even when I was like, 6, 7 years old, I was always flipping through my dad's records, playing music, playing the radio.
Yeah.
I had one of those like school tape recorders. Remember those tape recorders? They were like a black rectangle.
Yeah.
You press the 2 buttons to record, and they were recorded mono.
Yeah.
So I had one of those at home, and I used to keep it by the radio. And the radio was weird back then in like the 70s. They'd play like pop music, but every now and then you'd play like a Queen song or like a Foreigner song, like some like rock song.
Totally.
And as soon as the rock song came on, I'd tape it. So it would make these like mixed, mono mixtapes, so like the first 10 seconds of the song cut off.
Yeah.
And I would just listen to the rock, just listen to rock music like all night, just on my little tape recorder. So I was always kind of obsessed with music. But and I was really into Kiss when I was a little kid, like every little kid in the 70s.
Yeah.
But when I was in 7th grade, someone played the Sex Pistols record, Nevermind the Bollocks.
Yep.
And when I heard that song Bodies, and when I heard them say, "Fuck this, fuck," I don't know if I could swear on this.
You can, yeah, for sure, yeah. Fucking all the fuckers, fuck it, yeah.
Yeah, I was so blown away. I was like, this is the best, coolest, most honest music like I've ever heard in my life. And it was great music too.
Yeah.
So once I got into the Sex Pistols, that was it. It was just like, I was just obsessed with punk. Yeah. And then I got into the Ramones and like anything that I could get my hands on, it was weird too, because, punk was so small. You had to like, it's not like today where you can just go on the internet, listen to whatever you wanted. You had to like search it out. I used to go to records. I used to take the train to the city. I didn't have I wanted to spend all my money on records. It's funny. Who was I talking to about this? One of the other guys, a judge. We were talking about how we used to take the train. Yeah. And you'd want to keep all your money for records. So we'd hide in the bathroom so we didn't have to pay for the ticket.
Oh, shit.
And then we go to Bleecker Bob's. And, there wasn't really any like advertisement or internet. Like you just didn't know. Like I would just go to Bleecker Bob's and I would just buy whatever record had the coolest cover.
Yeah. Well,
luckily I'd lucked into like, Minor Threat, the Misfits, and, they just had cool covers.
Yeah, totally.
Discharge. So, I got into punk super early on, like junior high school. I was just like a full on punk rocker.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really go to any hardcore shows because, early 80s, the hardcore shows in New York started at like 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to go to a show at 2:00 in the morning? Like, I'm this kid from Westchester. My dad will kill me. Like literally. And so, the first hardcore show that I went to was Rock Against Reagan. I think it was like 1982 or 1983. And the only way I could go is because it was during the day. This was before CBGB's Matinee.
Yeah.
And, so they had a bunch of like, it was really cool actually. I went there, they had a bunch of like hip hop bands and they had a bunch of like salsa bands. It wasn't just punk. It was like all different kinds of music. So it was sort of like all these different kind of like underground genres of music got together and they were like protesting Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
and that band MDC played.
Yeah, man, Millions of Dead Cops. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love them. They're one of my favorite bands.
That's awesome.
And when they started playing and people started like slamming and stage diving, I was like, oh my God, this is it. I've been waiting years for this. Like I did my first stage dive,
Oh,
I was
shit.
like, I mean, I was probably, people probably hated me because I didn't even know what slamming was.
Yeah.
So I'm just like bopping around the pit, but there was so much energy and it was so incredible that you could get up on stage and you could sing along with the singer. I had only been to like a bunch of rock shows, and just to have that like total, communion with the band.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was like the most incredible thing because the music was so powerful. It was so moving.
Yeah.
And just the fact that you could actually be a participant in the whole thing instead of just a viewer.
Yeah. It's amazing.
That was like the most special, magical thing to me ever. And, so after that, all I wanted to do was I just wanted to, be in bands, listen to hardcore, absorb as much of that as I could.
Were you playing music then? Or did you play guitar at all? And...
Yeah, I started playing guitar, and I was in that band, Young Republicans.
Yeah.
We did, we actually, played some clubs. We played the Anthrax. That's how I met Capo.
Okay, awesome. I was going to ask you about that.
But, it was really cool. Like, people in Westchester, I mean, there was only like 2 or 3 punk rockers in my whole school. So one time we played the movie theater and we opened up for the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And people just couldn't.
That's awesome.
People just couldn't believe it. I mean, people didn't know what punk rock was. You heard, the only thing that you heard that regular people heard about punk rock was like the Sex Pistols, like on the news, and like people spitting on each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we started playing, they were so blown away. But, it was so cool. Here we are, a bunch of like 14, 15-year-old kids, and we're writing our own songs. We're booking our own shows.
Crazy.
What 15-year-old kids do that, except for hardcore kids?
Yeah. It's really true.
So it was cool. Hardcore empowered me to think that I can do this. The Ramones empowered me. Like before I heard the Ramones, I thought that playing music was like an impossibility.
Yeah.
You had to be like a virtuoso and you had to get signed to a record label.
Yep.
And, but then you hear the Ramones and I'm playing Ramones songs after playing guitar for like 3 months. And it's just like, and it was so cool. It's not, they're not good looking guys. They're a bunch of ugly guys.
That's true. So
they
true.
play very simplistic music. It like leveled the playing field that, I can do this too.
Mm-hmm.
So punk rock and hardcore, it was super empowering. Just as a musician, that you could actually, if you had something like in your heart that you wanted to say, you just bang out a few chords, you get up there and say it.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it's true. You were you like, so you were 14 then probably, or no, younger? For Young Republicans,
when I first started doing bands, I was probably like 15.
Yeah.
But I got into punk when I was like 12, I think, or something like that.
Were you were you drinking or partying back then? Probably not that young. You weren't exposed to it yet, or were you?
No, I was, because my brother, I had an older brother.
Okay.
And he thought it was like funny to take his younger brother to like keg parties.
Yeah.
So, I would tag along with him, and, I'd be like 13 years old and I'd get drunk and everybody would laugh.
Oh,
and so, everybody thought like it was cute to have this like little kid tagging along with his brother getting wasted at keg parties.
Jesus.
And I mean, thinking about it, like a lot of my friends started drinking and smoking like pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the suburbs are boring. Like people don't have much to do. There's not much of an outlet. So people start drinking like, I mean, I was even talking to Sammy, Sammy who plays drums for you today. And he was telling me that he was doing like acid and getting drunk on the red when he was like 11.
Jesus.
So, I mean, it's probably still true to this day that, kids are getting wasted way younger than...
It might be worse, especially with social media, all that stuff and the different pressures, for sure.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, kids are doing harder things now at even a younger age.
Yeah. So
But,
go ahead.
To tell you the truth, I used to go to parties and I used to get drunk. I never liked it. I didn't like the feeling of being out of control of my own like body.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the feeling of being, and I would always get hungover. Like the next day I would be super hungover. Sometimes I'd be hungover for like 3 days. I mean, I didn't really weigh that much. I probably weighed like 90 pounds.
Yeah.
And, I was basically peer pressured into it, you know, from my older brother and his friends and, you know, from my friends. And, I did it because it was like the cool thing to do in school.
Yeah.
And you were just a loser. You were just a loser. You know, by the time you get to like junior high school, you're just a loser if you didn't party,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah. All the peer pressure.
And, I tell you, when I heard the first Minor Threat record I got was In My Eyes. I got that before I got the first single. Because I remember I went to Bleecker Bob's and I only had money for one. And this was before Out of Step even came out.
Yeah.
And I was like looking at the two Minor Threat singles. I had heard Minor Threat on the radio. And I was like, which one should I get? Which one should I get? So I just got In My Eyes just because I thought it had a cooler cover.
Yeah.
And I took it home, and I tell you, I heard that song Out of Step, and I was just like, fuck, this is exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. And
Totally
it was pretty much from that second, and when I found out I was straight edge, it was just like, that's it, I'm going straight edge. Like, fuck my school, fuck the rest of the kids in my school. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be peer pressure into it. I don't like it. And,
awesome.
you know, just knowing that there was other people out there that kind of felt exactly how I did. Again, it just empowered me.
Yeah.
Just enough to kind of like, you know, just say, fuck it. I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another lucky thing that I did. I tell you, I made a lot of bad decisions in my life. I made a few really good ones.
Yeah.
And one of the really good ones was to become straight edge when I was like 15 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was to go vegetarian when I was like 19.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
And those were two of the most biggest positive decisions that I made in my whole entire life.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, I went vegetarian because of Youth Today and Gorilla Biscuits. We'll get to that later, but yeah, man, so thank you for that. So then Violent Children, that's what that was next up.
Yeah, so I started going to shows. You know, my dad worked in the city.
Yeah.
And, you know, the city back then was a mess.
Scary.
I mean, the city is not like it was now.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was just watching, me and my son, you know, we have this guy that lives up here, and he always shops at the store my son works at. His name's Serpico.
Okay.
He's that guy that they made that movie about. You ever
Really?
heard about that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
But he lives up here. So
wow.
my son is always talking to him he works at a health food store. He's always talking to him. So there's some documentary online about Serpico. So we watched it a few days ago. And, you know, the whole story of Serpico is like he was a cop in like the 70s and the 80s. And like every cop was on the take.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, every cop is just like, you know, taking money from drug dealers to look the other way.
Yeah.
So like, you know, drugs in like Manhattan in the 70s and like the early 80s, it's just like insane. The whole city was crazy.
Yeah.
You remember how it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was like that during the 80s.
Yeah.
The city was like the Wild West.
Yeah.
And, you know, so my dad, who worked in the city, he understood, hey, this isn't a good place for my 16-year-old son to hang out.
Yeah, exactly.
So he'd never let me go to shows, but for some reason I used to go to shows at the Anthrax, which was in Stamford, Connecticut.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe my dad just thought Connecticut, it's just like rich state where everybody like is preppy and like dressed nice,
yeah.
and so Stanford must not be that bad. Stanford's freaking horrible.
Yeah, I remember going to shows there. Sketchy, yeah, man, sketchy.
Yeah, I mean, so sketchy of a neighborhood where the Anthrax was. But for some reason, my dad used to let me go there, so I used to go to shows in Connecticut. So Capo grew up was living in Danbury. He grew up in Danbury, so he used to go to shows there too. And so we met, and you know, even punk was small back then. Straight edge was even smaller.
Yeah.
You know, find somebody else that was straight edge. It's like, you know, I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And so the first time I went to the Anthrax, Capo was there, and he had an X on his hand, and he had a skateboard. And even before I talked to him, I was like, this guy's going to be my friend. You know? Because it's just like, you know, you know, skating's so big now. I mean, people
I
can't
know.
even fathom it. Skating was like, you get made fun of for riding a skateboard back then.
100%.
If you were like above the age of 10 and you had a skateboard, people like would make fun of you.
100%.
So I met Capo, and, you know, we became instant friends. We used to hang out, and he was already in that band Violent Children.
Okay.
And their guitar player went to college, and they were pretty popular in Connecticut, in like the Anthrax scene. So
Yeah.
when their guitar player went to college, he asked me to join, and I was like, wow, I'm finally going to be in like a band that actually, you know, and they had played like CBGBs and stuff. So I was pretty impressed. I was psyched to get in the band.
That's awesome. Did you skate too back then?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, there was no street skating. We just built a half pipe in the woods.
Wow.
Like a huge half pipe. And we used to just like skate half pipes and stuff. We would skate pools in the sun and in the winter when the pools were drained.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Did you have a favorite trick?
I wasn't really good. I could do backside airs. That was probably my favorite trick.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it was funny because like none of us were really good because none of us knew how to skate.
Yeah.
Like, you maybe get a Thrasher magazine every now and then. You try to figure out the tricks just by looking at the pictures.
Totally.
But there was no one good that could really like show us like anything. So none of us were really all that good.
Yeah, there's like the sequence shots they had in Thrasher. You could like follow the sequence shots, but then until
exactly
until
I remember trying to figure out how to do an ollie from the sequence pictures. It's like impossible.
Yeah, until the Bones Brigade videos came out, and that changed everything, man. It was so amazing.
Oh yeah, for sure,
Dude.
for sure. Those were amazing.
All the soundtracks in those, dude, so good.
They did change everything. Yeah, that was cool. I love Bones Brigade.
So how long did we in Violent Children before? Because Youth of Today comes next, right? After that, or no?
Yeah, I was probably like I was probably 17 when I was in Violent Children.
Yeah.
And we were sort of split down the middle because me and Capo were super serious about hardcore. I mean,
yeah,
hardcore was our life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they call it hardcore. It's like you're not into anything else. You're into hardcore. It's like you're dedicating yourself to this crazy ass music that has just kind of like overtaken your life.
True.
You can't really concentrate on anything else. So we were into hardcore. We wanted to make a serious band because we were straight edge.
Yeah.
And we were into like positive music. I mean, we love 7 Seconds.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of that going around.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we wanted to make this band. You know, we wanted to make it a serious band, but the singer and the bass player wanted to make it kind of like a joke band.
Okay.
Like they loved like the Meat Men, and they were doing like,
yeah,
you know, they're just doing like jokey stuff on stage. And then finally, you know, we were friends with Johnny Stiff, who booked shows at CBGB.
Yep.
We had just met him at shows, and for some reason he liked us.
Yeah.
And so he said, "Hey, do you guys want to play?" This is when the matinees had just first started at CBGB's, and he said, "Hey, does Violent Children want to play with the Circle Jerks at a matinee at CBGB's?" And we were like, "Oh my God, like to play with the Circle Jerks?"
Yeah, it's awesome.
And our singer was like, "Nah, I don't want to do it.
Whoa.
I just don't. I just don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to drive all the way to New York City on a Sunday. I got to go to school the next day or something like that." And we're just like, if you can't be bothered to freaking play with the Circle Jerks at CBGB's, we can't do a band with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we like that literally broke up the band. And this was probably like, I was getting close to graduating. And so Capo was just like, "You want to know something? Screw this. Let's get really serious. Let's make a straight edge band." And, he said, "I want to sing." And he goes, "I don't want to play drums." And he goes, "I want to make the music super hard, like Negative Approach.
Yeah.
But I want to make the lyrics super positive, like 7 Seconds."
Sick.
And so that was kind of like our mission statement, to do like a hardcore band.
Yeah.
But make it positive.
Yeah.
And so that's how we started Youth Today. We got the drummer and the bass player from Young Republicans who went to my school.
Mm-hmm.
And we started, and I tell you, it's so weird. You know, it's like, sometimes in your life, like certain ingredients come together, and the sum is greater than the total of the parts.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like something, like you just get together with certain people, and like magic happens.
I agree.
And it was so weird. It's like as soon as like Capo started singing, and we started doing Youth of Today, people were like really interested about the band. Like I can't. Like we slugged it out in Young Republicans and like Violent Children, like nothing much was happening. And then all of a sudden we started Youth Today. It was like, hey, do you want to play this show? Hey, do you want to play this show? People are coming down to see us from like Boston. Like, I don't know if it was like the straight edge thing just kind of intrigued people because straight edge was dead. You know, Minor Threat had been broken up for years. SSD had been broken up. But we started playing, and our first show was with Agnostic Front in Connecticut.
Damn.
And they were like, hey, you guys want to play? And it was an incredible show. I mean, it was, and like literally that was our first show. Richie Underdog was there. I met him at that very first show.
Yeah.
And it was just weird. Like from that show on, every show we played was like an incredible show with like kids singing along. We didn't even have a record out.
Wow.
And then we played that early on. I mean, I think, probably less than 10 shows in, we played with 7 Seconds. And Kevin was like, oh my God, your band is so great. I want to put out your record. Come on tour with us. I mean,
damn.
Stuff just started happening. I mean, you know how it is.
Yeah,
like,
man.
Some reason you get together with Rusty, you get together with these people, and just
some magic.
The chemistry is right. The chemistry is right, and stuff just started taking off, and it was really like it's exciting for an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah, what year was that? 86.
We started the band in 85.
Okay.
I graduated high school in 85.
Okay.
And we started playing that summer.
Damn.
And literally, I mean, by December was when we did that tour with 7 Seconds on the West Coast. So within 6 months, we had our record hadn't come out yet. But Can't Close My Eyes came out in the spring, but we were already, signed to Kevin Seconds' record label. We're already doing a whole West Coast tour with 7 Seconds. The first show was New Year's Eve with 7 Seconds in Reno, Nevada.
Yeah,
that's where they're from. That's their hometown.
Yeah, yeah.
It was an incredible show. I mean, you can imagine Kevin Seconds playing drums for us. Everybody wants to see us.
Fucking awesome. I can't believe that.
Our second show is in Northern California with Social Distortion and the Vandals.
Wow.
And it's a huge show.
Sure.
I mean, there's probably 1,500 kids there. I mean, we had never even seen a punk show that big
back
at this
then,
point. And we're playing it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it was really cool because the show was sold out. And it was all these hardcore kids that couldn't get into the show. So there's probably 50 hardcore kids that couldn't get in. So we snuck them all in the back.
Awesome.
And so the kids we became friends with them. They were so indebted to us that we had snuck them into the show. But when we started playing, these 50 hardcore kids are like losing their minds. I mean, we didn't even have a record out. No one knows our stuff. But, you get 50 hardcore kids that are stage diving for every single one of your songs.
Great.
Like, people are like, who is this band?
Yeah,
I mean?
Man. And that's what's crazy about that? That's way pre-internet. That's just word of mouth. And that's huge. That says a lot about the band and the impact, too, because that was just the word spreading across the country. It's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, and it was really cool because 7 Seconds actually didn't play that show. I don't know why, but they didn't play that show. So it was just Kevin Seconds was with us.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any of the gear because we were using 7 Seconds gear.
Oh shit.
So Kevin was like, you got to borrow a guitar amp. And I was like, dude, whose guitar amp I'm going to borrow? Like, it's the freaking Vandals and it's Social Distortion.
Yeah.
And Kevin Seconds said, hey man, the Vandals are out of their minds. You're better off asking Social Distortion. He goes, go ask Mike Ness. And I'm like, how the hell am I going to ask Mike Ness? And first of all, Mike Ness had just gotten out of rehab. Social Distortion had kind of broken up for 6 months while he was in rehab.
Yeah.
This was literally the first show with Mike Ness out of rehab. And so that's why everybody was so excited about the show.
Oh, wow.
There was tons of people there.
Yeah.
And so Mike Ness had cut his hair. He was dressed like a complete skinhead. He had like a Fred Perry, boots and braces, shaved head, and he had gotten like all these tattoos. And I'm just like, shit, dude, I don't even know like if I want to even talk to that guy. Like he's gonna fucking pop me.
Yeah.
And so Kevin was like, no, dude. I was like, and me and Kevin got in this big argument. I was like, you're Kevin Seconds. You go ask him. He's like, I'm not going to ask him. Look at that guy. So we got this big argument. And finally, he like pushed me. He's like, you got to ask him, man. We got to play this show. So I walked up to him, and it was really cool. I was like, hey, man, what's up? I'm in this venue today. We're opening for you guys. I know there's a lot to ask, but we're on tour with 7 Seconds, but they're not playing. Is there any way that I can borrow your guitar amp? And it was so cool because Mike Ness goes to me. He goes, you guys are that straight edge band from New York, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, hey man, I just got out of rehab. I'm totally into what you guys are putting down. You can borrow my amp anytime.
Oh, dude, that's amazing.
And it was super cool. So I got to use this like, you know, Marshall full stack of, you know, Mike Ness's, and you know, we sounded awesome.
Wow, that's so cool, man. Wow.
Yeah, it was cool. That was, and I mean, this is literally like, you know, so stuff is happening. We have been a band for like 5 months, and we're already like playing shows for Social Distortion, touring the West Coast.
Dude.
Our next show was at Fender's in Long Beach with Youth Brigade, 7 Seconds,
damn,
Uniform Choice. I think the band Dr. No played.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of those huge Fender shows.
Yeah,
you know,
Fender's is
like
crazy. Yeah.
And it was incredible. Uniform Choice were incredible. I mean, what a show that was.
Damn.
I mean, so this is like I'm 18 years old. This is like my dream come true, you know, on break from college, and, you know, all this stuff has happened. I mean, you know, we're meeting Uniform Choice. Uniform Choice really liked us.
Wow.
You know, and it was weird. Like kids liked us. I mean, like we played that first show. Our record wasn't even out.
And Can't Close My Eyes was the 7-inch, right? The first one. Yeah.
And so after that tour, Capo had already quit school.
Yeah.
I went back to school, but I wasn't into it.
Yeah.
I already knew at that point that I was going to quit school, and I was going to try to do You Today.
Yeah.
But then our record came out in that, you know, in like the springtime, I think. And so, you know, I didn't apply again for school. I already knew that I wasn't going to go to school. I took all my money that I was going to use for like books and stuff for school, and I bought an amp and a new guitar.
That's awesome.
And then I told my dad, I was like, "Hey, Dad, I'm not going back to school. I'm going on tour for the whole summer. Spent all my money on an amp and a guitar. It just broke his heart."
Damn.
But you know, sometimes you got to break your parents' heart to follow your own heart.
Yeah, it's true.
And we did, and so that whole Can't Close My Eyes tour, I booked it myself.
Holy shit! Pre-internet too, which is amazing.
It was pre-internet. I got a bunch of credit card phone numbers from one of these guys in Albany, and I got a bunch of phone numbers from Kevin Seconds, and I literally booked the whole thing myself, and it was really cool because
holy shit,
there was some hype about the band, so it was actually very easy to book the tour.
Yeah,
and we played a bunch of shows with 7 Seconds too, and so Kevin Seconds was telling all the club, you know, the promoters, like, oh yeah, this is an up and coming band, we signed them, they're really good, book these guys. I gotta hand it to Kevin, man.
Damn, man.
He really went to bat for us. Like, he really liked the band. He really believed in the band. And, you know, he opened a lot of doors for us that, you know, other bands probably, you know, new bands probably didn't have. So totally indebted to that guy.
That's amazing, man.
And it was great. We played 930 Club, and Ian MacKaye was there on the side of the stage.
Wow.
That was another, like, epic moment on the Can't Close My Eyes tour.
Holy shit.
It was great.
Yeah, because nobody was really talking about straight edge or anything, like you said. Like, it just kind of died out. And I'm sure there were kids that were still straight edge and like just listening to old records of bands that weren't around anymore. And then you guys came out, breath of fresh air and same message, and it's awesome, man. It's crazy. The timing was perfect.
I mean, it was weird too. I mean, we were bold. We put X's on our hands. We went out there. By that time, like Craig was in the band. I think Richie was in the band too.
Yeah, Richie talked about that.
Actually, Richie wasn't in the band.
No, that's not to break down the walls.
We did with Craig and Tommy from Straight Ahead.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fuck.
And then Tommy quit after that tour. He just didn't like touring. And then we got Mike Judge, and we got Richie.
Wow.
And that's when the whole break down the walls thing started happening.
Yeah,
and it was funny too. Because we went on a Can't Close My Eyes tour. No one knew about Straight Edge. Like Straight Edge was like so uncool. We were getting beers thrown at us like left and right, and death threats, and people trying to fight us. And
wow,
there was no Straight Edge scene. It was like, we were like fucking Lewis and Clark out there, pioneering shit across the country.
I love this, man. It's crazy.
And it was really cool to see, because by the time like Break Down the Walls came out and we did that Break Down the Walls tour, Straight Edge had caught on like wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible to see what happened in like 1 year.
Yeah. It's crazy because
like New York City.
Go ahead.
Even in New York City, the most drugged out, hardcore scene in the country, somehow or other, this whole kind of like Gorilla Biscuit started, and even like you remember even like Ray Dees was Straight Edge with the X on his hand.
Yeah.
It kind of caught on in New York City, and then from there it just caught on around the country. It was really kind of an exciting time.
Did you guys catch any shit in the New York scene for being like the Straight Edge band?
Oh my God! The first time we played CBGB's, we played with Agnostic Front, and we were backstage, and we were putting X's on our hands, and Johnny Stiff was back there. It's like, you guys are really going to put an X on your hand at CBGB's in New York City? You're going to be fucking eating like cats. Because dogs are going to come out, they're going to eat you like cats. Are you kidding me? Straight Edge is never going to catch on in this city. Drugs are just part of the city. You just got to learn to accept it.
Wow.
And, we took it as like a challenge.
Yeah.
And whatever, we went out there, we did our thing. Little did Johnny Stiff know, in a few months, it was like a huge Straight Edge scene in New York City.
That's amazing. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So at one time, it was like Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits, all coexisting. We're also with Judge and Side by Side and Bold all at the same time, or no?
Yeah, all those bands started around then. It was like 87.
Yeah.
And then by 88, I mean, stuff was just like huge.
Yeah, We're Not in This Alone came out then, right? Around there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
by then we're just playing the show. Like every show is packed and every kid is singing every word. We could, by like 1988, we could play a show and like every kid that comes is Straight Edge.
Yeah. How did that feel? Did you guys feel like a responsibility? Did you feel any pressure? Did you feel, I don't know, how'd you feel like having, I don't know, that you guys up on these pedestals too? Like this is like some iconic shit that was happening,
I mean, it felt great at the time.
Yeah.
It's just like, Straight Edge was big, but it was also very, very trendy.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason it became really cool to be Straight Edge, and Straight Edge was the cool it thing to be. And then by like 89, like 90, Straight Edge wasn't cool anymore.
It's crazy.
And then how do you deal with that when you're like still totally into it?
Yeah, totally. And
it was a really weird time, wasn't it? 89 to be a Straight Edge kid. Yeah. All of your friends start drinking.
Yeah.
It was just like.
And the scene got different too, for sure.
Scene got different. Scene got way more violent.
Totally scary. Yeah, man.
I mean, by like 1990, I remember that one CD show. I think it was a Warzone show. Some guy pulled out a gun.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think
just like, yo, man,
yeah.
shit's getting dark.
Yeah, it was really dark. It was really dark. I want to go back to Winter This Alone because you guys had the No More song, which was an incredible song in that video. And that was so powerful. And I talked about Richie the other day. I talk about a lot of people so far on this podcast that I feel like youth of today, you know, obviously KRS-One at the same time, but this genre, hardcore music, and especially Youth of Today and Gorilla Biscuits, were the first ones pushing the animal rights shit, man, because that's where I got inspired by you guys, and there was always the PETA pamphlets at the show. Somebody were playing the videos, but obviously Morrissey, you know, Meat is Murder, but that was a different genre. But you guys, what was that transition? And I don't think the Krishna was actually part of you guys at that point, but what was the transition to vegetarianism? Like, where'd that come from?
Well, you know, when me and Ray moved to New York, we totally started to, like, you know, you just rethink everything.
Yeah.
Like everything that you were taught from when you were a kid,
Mm-hmm.
you know, now you're in like New York City. Like, you know, like I remember when I moved to New York City, it's like when I was a kid growing up in high school, there was no kid in the school that was like openly gay. Like if you were an openly gay kid in my high school, you would just be so mercilessly made fun of. That even if you were gay, you weren't telling anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like everybody's throwing out the word faggot. I mean, even like when I was in high school, oh, you faggot. You know, it was just like part of our like language or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I remember the day that I moved to New York City, literally the day that I moved there, me and Cap had an apartment on 15th Street. We loaded all our stuff in and it was really late at night. I was like, man, I'm going to get some ice cream to celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were in the West Village. We lived on 15th Street between 7th and 8th. And so there was a little bodega that was down near Greenwich Ave. So I was walking down, and I remember I saw two guys in a doorway making out, like two gay guys making out, and I was like shocked.
Yeah,
like I couldn't believe, like, you know, it was like the first time I had ever kind of seen something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? And it like disturbed me just because I'm this like, you know, whatever sheltered kid from Westchester who was just like, you know, no one ever talked about that stuff. You never knew anybody that was gay in school, you know. And it shocked me like in a good way.
Yeah. Like,
okay, there's people with other different kinds of lives, and here you are in New York City, and, you know, there's different people from different countries, you know, there's people, you know, from different religions, people from different cultures.
Yeah.
And you just gotta wrap your fucking head around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was good for me. So, you know, it was a time in our life when we were young and we just started like rethinking everything, you know, from where we grew up in our like small towns.
Yeah.
And so one thing that we were definitely rethinking was like health. And, you know, because we lived right down the street from Integral Yoga, that health food store. So we used to start shopping. We used to start shopping there, and we would go to the bookstore, and we'd buy like books on health. And so like me, Capo, and like I was friends with Richie because we had met him at that first Youth Today show. We really started to get into like health food. And, you know, that's when we started getting into vegetarianism because we started realizing that meat wasn't good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually got a job at Prana Foods, which was a health food store on the east side.
You know what's crazy? You said that.
Job.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Carl, but you know what's funny to say? You worked there at one point. John Joseph said he worked there yesterday. Chaka worked there, and Mark Supertouch worked there. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember those dudes working there.
Yeah,
it was funny when I worked there. I think John Watson worked at the health food restaurant with Capo. Capo worked at the restaurant, which is 2 blocks away. It's called the Himsa.
Wow. Okay.
And Vinny Signorelli from that. What's the name of that band that he was in?
I don't know.
That kind of like noise rock band. Did you know that guy, Vinny Signorelli?
I don't know if I know him. No, it might be before my time there.
Oh man, he was in like a popular like New York like noise band.
Okay.
For some reason the name like escapes me. But
Unsane?
Tell me every day, man. Unsane, the Unsane.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. So he used to tell me every day, you got to get off this meat, man. This meat's going to kill you. It's no good for you. And so we really like, you know, studied it, and we used to start reading books on it. It was something that we totally got into. And I remember me and Cap, when we were writing the We're Not in This Alone record.
Yeah.
Capo came to me and goes, I'm thinking about writing a song about vegetarianism.
Sick.
What do you think? Are we just pushing people too far? Because he was like, because it's so, just to change your life to become straight edge, is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so we actually talked about it, and we were just like, and I was like, you know what? I think it's a great idea. This is what we're into. I mean, parkour is about speaking your life. You know what I mean? So whatever. I mean, we just did it, not knowing how people were going to react to it.
Yeah.
And it was great because people reacted so positively to it, and a lot of people became vegetarian from that song.
Hell yeah, it was so powerful. I was so bummed. I was like out of town or something, was sick of it all that weekend. I wanted to be there, man. That was such a great video. It was funny, but it was also had a strong message. It wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, fuck. Did they play that on MTV? They played it on TV too, right?
They told us they wanted to play it on MTV, but they told us they would have to censor out all the slaughterhouse footage.
Wow.
And we told them no way.
Yeah, fuck that.
But thinking back, we should have done it.
Mm.
Maybe like kids who normally wouldn't like be exposed to that might have gotten into it, but we told them no. But it's funny. I remember when we stayed at Maximum Rock and Roll when We're Not This Alone came out at the house they had there.
Yeah.
And we played the video for Tim Yohannan, and he laughed at it. And he goes, "No one's going to become vegetarian from this video."
Wow.
Little did he know.
That is so fucking funny, man.
But
it's crazy.
But yeah, it was like, but it was it's one of the things that I'm most proud of.
Should be.
Because when you're straight edge, you're doing it for yourself. When you're becoming a vegetarian,
Yep.
you're doing it for the world.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I could die tomorrow, and hey, man, I turned a lot of people onto a lot of like pretty progressive, cool shit that
100%.
I got into. That I'm thankful that I got into in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if one person became vegetarian from that song, what a success the whole band is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's way ahead of its time. Now it's so amazing how veganism and gluten-free and all this plant-based life is so popular. It's crazy to see the world like being more conscious. We have a more conscious, caring society, like you guys said back then. It's amazing, like to see it come full circle. And shit, there was a plant-based fucking commercial during the Super Bowl and during the Grammys for Beyond Burger. It's insane, dude.
I tell you, it is unbelievable. If you had told me in like, even in like the early 90s, hey, there's going to be a health food store the size of a city block on Houston Street.
Yeah.
I'd be like, dude, and sure enough, here it is. Not even that long later. I mean, a couple of decades is like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have Whole Foods, like,
crazy.
All over the city, and like vegetarian restaurants everywhere. I mean,
everywhere.
You remember how it was back then. You could barely find tofu.
Totally. I remember you worked.
I mean, it was only like.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The health food stores were few and far between, even in New York City.
Yeah, down to earth.
Yeah, I worked at all of them.
Yeah, I remember that. Down to earth. Yeah. Well, it's like
I literally worked at all. I worked at Down to Earth.
Yep.
I worked at Sunrise on Houston Street with TC3.
Nice.
I worked at Prana Foods. I didn't work at Integral Yoga, but I used to shop there all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to see how stuff has just gotten so mainstream. I couldn't be more happy about it.
It's so amazing. It's like the most positive, like you said, straight edge was kind of a trend back there. Yeah, but straight edge is actually helping save people's lives. And now veganism is a trend. It's the best trend ever because it's helping the animals and the planet and everybody. It's fucking amazing, man. Jay-Z and Beyonce pushing it. It's crazy, man.
Dude, you never know. I mean, in a few more decades, there could be more vegans than meat eaters.
I know that. Then that's hopefully.
I mean, when you think about it, it's almost like, cigarettes back then. It was just like a given that, like, people smoke cigarettes. You could smoke cigarettes in a restaurant. You could smoke cigarettes on an airplane. I remember taking an airplane when I was a kid, and there used to be smoking rows in an airplane.
I do
where you could smoke in an airplane.
It's crazy.
And here it is, like a few, decades later. And, people realize smoking's not good for you. It's not like a socially accepted thing so much anymore.
Yeah.
hopefully in a few decades, meat eating gets to be the next cigarette. You know what I mean?
I agree, man. It's so barbaric that shit still happens. The way they're slaughtered, just everything that, with agriculture, that's like the biggest problem with pollution in this whole fucking the whole world at this point, and with the global warming, all that shit. It's crazy, man.
But in a way, it's sort of exciting to see. Every day, it seems to be getting more and more kind of like locked into the mainstream consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, it's getting there.
Yeah. I remember being at the practice spot in Queens where Gorilla Biscuits and Youth Today practice. I remember that being at work. I used to work there and like book all the practices. It was Marco Siega's spot, like a rehearsal spot. And I remember when Ray just came back from India for the first time, and he's doing all these crazy handstands, all these like poses in the rehearsal room, and you guys are working on, I think, We're in This Alone. Was that when he started bringing the Krishna conscious into the band at that point?
He started getting into that stuff around like the Disengage record.
Okay.
Like towards the end.
Okay, so it wasn't We're in This Alone. Okay.
Well, actually, it was. He was into it. I think he even put one like there's on the original lyric sheet, there was like a book list.
Okay.
And I think there was one of like Prabhupada's books was on that list. So he was starting to get into it for that record.
Yeah.
And then by the time like Disengage came out, he was so into it that, and it was funny because the band was more popular than ever. I mean, we had just done that tour of like Europe and like, you know, we could play a show. We came back. We could play a show in any major city and get 1,000 kids. I mean,
wow.
For a hardcore band, that was like huge back then.
Massive.
And but we knew he was going to quit.
Damn.
Just because he was so into like the spiritual thing. We saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Walter really got into Gorilla Biscuits and I really got into Judge, because we knew the days were numbered for Youth of Today.
Yeah.
And which is good. I think the band kind of like, I'm just really happy with all the records that we made, and it was probably the right time for the band to end anyway.
Mm-hmm. What year was that?
And plus I got to focus more on Judge too, which was cool.
Yeah. What year was that?
Probably 89.
Okay. And then Judge came out when? How soon after?
Well, Judge was a band in 88, but we couldn't really do much because Youth of Today was just like touring constantly.
Yeah.
But then finally when Youth of Today broke up, that's when Judge started. It was probably like 89. That's when Judge started, actually touring.
Yeah.
Outside of like the tri-state area.
Yeah. And how was the reaction for Judge back then? Because it was so much harder, had a little metal edge to it. Like your guitar playing, your riffs were harder. I mean,
it was way more complicated music.
Yeah, somebody said that Bringing It Down is the Age of Quarrel for straight edge. That's what somebody said. It's a pretty good. I think it's pretty close to that. Just lyrically too, because you were coming from like not that Youth of Today wasn't hard. The music was hard, but the message and everything was positive too. And then Judge had a different style of lyrics, and it was a little darker and harder.
Yeah, totally different vibe. The Judge was a weird band too, because I wouldn't say the lyrics promoted violence, but there was a few lines in there like, "Those drugs are going to kill you if I don't get to you first," and stuff like that. That kind of like, it was pretty like hardcore.
Yeah.
And so Judge was such a weird band because everybody loved Judge. Even to this day, everybody, like Youth Today was mostly straight edge kids.
Yeah.
Like you had to be part of that genre, but we would get like skinheads love Judge, metalhead kids love Judge. I mean, it was like like we would play a show and it was all sorts of people.
Yeah.
Like sketchy, bikery kind of dudes.
Yeah. I remember you might
be there.
Yeah, in Florida too. I heard some stories. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was always a ton of fights at the shows.
Yeah.
Every show was some kind of crazy riot or like brawl.
Completely opposite of youth today, right? Completely opposite of those positive vibes.
Dude, the complete opposite. It was crazy dark. I was on that tour. I mean, especially coming off like doing a few years of Youth Today, where everything was just like super light, positive, and like then you do like a Judge tour and there's like fights every night. I'm even thinking like, what the hell am I doing with my life?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this shit's getting dark. And then we played that show in Florida. And we pull up to the show, we pull around the show, and there's all these skinheads there that are the security, and they're showing each other their guns.
Damn.
And we're just like, dude, this is like, you know, it's a bunch of like crazy like Nazi skinheads with guns.
Scary, man.
And then we were playing the set, and some like black guy kind of walked in from the street, and all the skinheads just beat the shit out of him. They're like, you know. It's like nigger this, nigger that. And it's just like, whoa, dude. This is like, and it's the same guys with the guns.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to be a little careful about, you know, you don't want to get shot either.
No.
So it was just good. And then it's like after that show, it's just like Mike Judge has had it. Yeah, because you can imagine being Mike Judge, like he's the guy that wrote all those lyrics.
Yeah.
So he's kind of feeling like, you know, shit, he's kind of feeling responsible for the whole thing.
Yes.
You know, so that's basically what broke Judge up, was that probably just that show. It was just like so demoralizing.
Fuck. That's scary too, man, because you're outnumbered. It's like they're probably fans of your band, but they're also kind of crazy. And
dude, they went from singing along to every word of every song to beating up a black guy and calling him a nigger. It's like, these dudes are our fans.
That's
you know what I mean?
Terrible, man. Yeah, it's terrible.
It's just terrible. It's horrible. Like, I didn't want any part of that.
Yeah, because also at the time and around the 92, it was getting violent in New York also. But then you're trying to travel and do a different band, and then there's violence at those shows outside of the city. So it's definitely not just in New York. It started to spread, like the violence and the tough guy posturing, all that stuff started coming into the scene and stuff. Obviously, it's been there for the whole time, but it depends on the bands. But
I mean, that's really when like I started taking like just a step back from hardcore in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I joined Gorilla Biscuits after that.
Yeah,
but still, even those guys were getting into like different kinds of music, and you know, Walter was starting Quicksand, and didn't really want to, you know, have too much. But you know, we loved hardcore.
Yeah.
But you know, the scene in New York was just nuts.
Yeah, scary.
People getting stabbed. I remember that last Gorilla Biscuit show, like Minus getting stabbed.
Yeah, the Marquee. I was there. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude.
That's scary, man. The whole shit.
That was like, I mean, who would think that someone would be stabbed at a Gorilla Biscuit show?
I know, man.
Like that's when it's time where you just got to start rethinking things.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. It's just different people were coming to shows that really knew nothing about hardcore and the values of it, or even what the lyrics were about. They came to get in fights and get in the pit, like soundtrack for violence, like Civ sings about. Like it's true, it became that, and it was dark, man. It was scary because you're supposed to. Go ahead.
The cool thing about that '80s hardcore scene, I don't even know if it can even be recreated in like this day and age.
Yeah,
but it was like hardcore was such a family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it was just because like the whole outside world was so, you know, the Lower East Side was a dangerous place.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, you got together with your tribe, and it was like, you guys stuck together because you might get beat up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
But people were tight. I mean, it was like a really close scene. It was like, and it didn't matter it didn't matter whether you were straight edge or not. I mean, we were friends with like Warzone and Agnostic Front.
Yep.
And, you know, all those bands were just like, you know, super close. And it's just like that started to like, that whole kind of family vibe just started to really deteriorate. You know, by the early 90s. It was really sad to see.
Everybody started going their separate ways and stuff. And it was crazy because you go to those shows to escape whatever fucked up childhood you had, whatever things going on at your school, maybe being bullied or just everyday life. You go to those shows to like have fun, express yourself, get your aggression out in a positive way, sing along, sweat, and have fun, and not feel threatened and feel totally safe. Then it became complete opposite of that. You know,
yeah, exactly. That was your safe haven from being picked on.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got to go to show and worry about like getting a hammer in your head.
Yeah, it's
fucking. Like, it's like, man, those shows were like my freaking refuge.
Yes.
From all that crap.
Yeah, 100%.
And then like, yeah, it was really like it was strange, man. Strange for everybody.
Where was Bold? I mean, where was Project X and Side by Side in those years? Like, were you in 2 bands at one time? Obviously you were, but
I mean, I was doing 3 bands at one time.
Fuck.
I would regularly play like 2 or 3 sets at a show because Judge would play with you today. I'd be playing with Bold. You know,
it's crazy.
I mean, Project X didn't really play. We only played like maybe 3 shows.
Yeah.
So didn't really have to worry too much about that. But
yeah,
you know, at one point I was in, you know, Youth Today, Bold, and Judge at the same time, and we would even like, you know, tour a lot together.
Wow. 3 sets.
I didn't care. I had a lot of energy. Like,
yeah,
you know, 2 or 3 sets was nothing for me.
Wow. And so then what was the break? Like, were you doing music all the way up until when Shelter started, or were you doing something different? Like, what was that gap between Judge and Shelter?
I was in Gorilla Biscuits.
Yeah.
And we actually were writing a bunch of really good songs. Like, if that second Gorilla Biscuits LP ever came out, it would have been awesome.
Yeah. Is that Distance was on there?
Yeah, that was the whole Distance thing. And there was a bunch of like really cool, there was a bunch of really cool, kind of almost like Dag Nasty-ish sort of like post-hardcore, like melodic vibe was going on. And it was really great. I mean, Walter's such a great songwriter.
Amazing songwriter, man. Yeah.
But, you know, at the same time, Quicksand was starting. And Quicksand was just so mighty that it was just like, you know, Walter really wanted to put his whole kind of like heart and soul into that.
Yeah, which makes sense because he'd been writing songs and not singing them in the other bands, and like totally makes sense.
Yeah. So Gorilla Biscuits just kind of like, I think just kind of fell apart back then.
91. Yeah.
And, you know, that's really when I started getting on my spiritual trip too.
Yeah.
You know, I was like disillusioned with hardcore, totally disillusioned with the hardcore scene.
Yep.
And, you know, I was just looking for more in life. And that's when I started getting into like Buddhism and, you know, Taoism. And I used to go to like that. There's like a New Age bookstore on Fifth Avenue. I used to go there all the time, spend all my money on books.
Wow. That's awesome.
And that's basically how I got into Krishna.
Okay.
And then eventually I was working at Down to Earth. Sid was working there too.
Remember that.
And Steve Reddy, who used to book shows in Albany, was living at my house. He had just come from that Krishna farm in Pennsylvania. And he was like, "Hey man, I'm thinking about," and me and him were really getting into Krishna together.
Yeah.
He was like, "Hey man, I'm going to move back to that farm. You want to come with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not going to tell anybody because I thought all those guys would think I was crazy and they would try to talk me out of it." So I literally disappeared. I freaking disappeared from the hardcore scene. Siv didn't know where I was. I quit my job. Siv was like, "What the hell's going on with Porcell? He's not working here anymore." Moved out of my apartment. Like, my dad didn't know where I was. I remember, like, after a month, my dad finally tracked me down and, like, called the temple there and was like, "What's going on?"
Holy shit. No phones back then either. Can't track you down either. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, there was no cell phones. And it was weird because I just did it. I was thinking, like, I'm just, like, going to quit music. I just got to get out of the city. I need a break from it all. It was like it was good for me too because it was like a detox. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just need to take a break, take a step back, and just freaking cleanse your body and your mind. I mean, that's kind of like how it was for me.
Yeah,
I went from this crazy hardcore scene with people getting stabbed, and you know, and then I was like just on a farm, and I was like, working with the cows, like gardening and stuff, and like, being out in nature. It was really exactly what I needed. It was quiet. I could think.
Yeah.
And it was funny too, because at the time, Vic had quit Shelter to do that band 108. And so Shelter were looking for a guitar player. They couldn't find a guitar player anywhere. They didn't know that I was living at Gitanagri. I was living at that farm.
Crazy.
And so, so all of Shelter, they just said, we're just going to go to India. And they went to India. And then they came back and they were like, man, we really got to find a guitar player. So they're asking around. And there was one hardcore kid who was like, hey, man, why don't you just get Porcell? He's living at that Krishna farm now in Pennsylvania. And they were like, what?
Oh, shit.
And so Capello told, he was funny. Capello just recently told me this. He said he called Gitanagri, and they had this one, like, it's a farm.
Yeah.
So I'm at this barn that's like miles away. So he calls for me at the one phone, which is at the office. And he was like, hey, is this guy named Porcell living there? And he was like, I know there's a new guy, but I'm not sure what his name is. And he goes, what does he look like? He goes, he kind of looks like you. He goes, that's the guy.
Oh, shit.
So Capello drives down to the farm.
Wow.
And I remember I'm working in the barn. I'm like literally like feeding cows in the barn. And he comes in with the rest of the guys at Shelter. I'm like, this is so cool. I can't believe you're a devotee now. We need a guitar player. Come back to Philadelphia with us. It's so great you can be in Shelter. And I was like, hey, man, I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't want anything to do with hardcore. I don't want anything to do with punk rock. Like, thanks for the offer, but no way.
Damn.
No way, no how am I going to, like, do hardcore again.
Oh, shit.
But I tell you, if you know Ray Capo, Ray Capo can talk anybody
100%.
into anything.
Yes.
And so it was actually, I mean, what he said made sense. He said, hey, man, did you read the Bhagavad Gita? And I said, yes. And the story of the Bhagavad Gita, which he reminded me of, is there's this warrior named Arjuna.
Yeah.
And there's these, like, horrible people that are about to literally, like, take over the world. Like, they're going to come to power. These people that are, like, just horrible, horrible people that want to, like, exploit the world for their own purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's this incredible warrior. He's one of the few people that's, like, such a good warrior that he can stop them. But he decides that I don't want to do this. I'm not into violence. I'm not into, I just want to go off and I just want to, like, be peaceful.
Yeah.
And so one of the lessons of the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna telling Arjuna, it's like, you don't have to give up what you're good at. You just have to do it in, like, a righteous and a positive way.
I love that. And
that makes all the difference. And he was like, you're one of the few people that actually has the skills. You're such a great warrior. You should fight in this war and stop these people before they take over the whole world.
Mm.
And so it's not what you do that makes the difference. It's how you do it.
Wow.
And he said, dude, you're not a farmer. He's like, you're a great guitar player. You're a communicator.
Mm-hmm.
You got this ability that you can that people listen to you. And, like, when you have a message, you should be out there. You should be out there, like, on the front lines, like, communicating with people.
Yeah.
He said, this is your opportunity. And I was like, dude, you want to know something? You're right. I'm not even good at farming. So, and it was funny too, because when I joined the temple, I literally sold everything that I owned.
Okay.
I saw these straight edge kids. I had like hundreds of T-shirts. And I saw these straight edge kids walking down the street. They were actually from France. I was like, hey, dudes, you guys want to buy my T-shirt collection? And they're like, yeah. They came over. They bought like they literally bought like 200 T-shirts off of me.
Holy
like,
shit.
I sold all my T-shirts. I sold all my furniture. I sold all my books. I sold everything. What was the one thing that I kept? My freaking guitar.
that was meant to be. It was meant to be. Yeah, man.
It was just that one thing that I still needed.
Wow. You sold all your records too, right?
Yeah, I sold all my records. So dumb.
Wow. You probably had some classics.
I mean, if I had my record collection, that record collection is probably worth like $100,000 today. Jeez, I mean, all my Misfit singles, signed by Glenn Danzig. I had like a stack of Chung Kings. I mean, Chung King was like,
dude,
a couple of years ago, Chung King was the highest selling record of the year.
I heard that, man.
It sold for almost $9,000. It got beat right at the end of the year. I think it was like 2016 or something. The only record that beat it out right at the end of the year was David Bowie's first single, sold for like $500 more.
Oh wow!
So I had a stack of them.
Damn.
I could have probably bought a house with just the Chung Kings that I had.
That's crazy, man. Would you sell them bigger Bobs or something?
I sold all to. Remember Dave Stein had that record store?
Yeah.
For a hot second.
Yeah.
I sold my whole entire collection for $1,500.
Oh man.
And I took all the money and I donated it to this author who put out this book called Lives of the Vaishnava Saints.
Oh wow, that's amazing, man. Are you serious?
Holy shit. I didn't even keep a dollar of it. I sold my collection, gave all the money. So I literally sold everything that I owned except for my guitar. It was kind of like, I don't know. Krishna knew that I was going to need that thing.
Yes. So then you left. How long were you at that farm for? How many months?
I was there for probably like 6 months.
Wow. Off the grid.
It was good, man. It was a good 6 months. Yeah, off the grid, doing a lot of meditation, waking up early, living healthy, doing like hard manual labor from sunrise to sundown. Learning all this new spiritual stuff. It was great.
And then you went back into the city after that, or?
Yeah, then I moved to Philly. That's where that record label Equal Vision started, and where Shelter was.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know he was in Philly first before he was upstate New York. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. I lived there for years. And then I lived in New York City. I lived in New York City at the Brooklyn Temple.
Oh, you did after that?
For a few years too. What was that?
So Shelter, man. Shelter was a whole different level, and then it was like, a Krishna conscious, straight edge vegan band. It was like such another level of consciousness and everything, man.
Yeah, we were all brahmacharis. Do you know what a brahmachari is?
No.
A brahmachari is a celibate monk that lives in a temple.
Wow. How long are you celibate for?
5 years.
Holy wow. That's dedication.
And dude, it was like, I mean, think about it. That was from when I was like 24 to like 29. Shit. That was like the hardest years to be celibate.
And there's no masturbation allowed?
Nope.
Wow, 5 years. That's crazy. I think Adam did that too. Not that long, but I know he's living in the temple too. That's
you know what? It's good. You know what? It's good, dude. It's such a, even if you just do it for a little bit,
yeah.
I mean, we live in such a sexualized culture.
True.
Just to kind of take that whole weight off your shoulders for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So liberating.
Yeah. I'm sure.
So much of our time and energy goes into like what we look like, how attractive we are to the opposite sex. It's like, it can take over your life.
True.
When you kind of like take that out of the equation, you just have so much more, brain power to like, put into like things that are so way more important.
It makes sense, actually.
It was incredible. It was like going to spiritual college. 5
years. That's pretty amazing, man. Yeah.
And we were going to India. I mean, we were spending months at a time living in like temples and ashrams in India. I mean, it was an incredible time in my life.
Yeah.
Studying with gurus and, really kind of like studying this like ancient literature, studying all this like yoga wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing.
And was the band happening at that time too, and touring in between?
Yeah, the band we would go out and tour. We'd stay at temples.
Yep.
I don't know how we did it, dude. We would like play till 1:00 in the morning and then wake up at like 4:00 in the morning.
Wow.
and chants.
That was, you guys were on Roadrunner too back then, right? That was Roadrunner? Super Soul, whatever?
Well, first we were on Equal Vision.
Yeah.
And then we got signed to Roadrunner, and then we moved to the Brooklyn Temple. The whole band lived at the Brooklyn Temple. And
how was that reaction coming out? With like, here's these guys from Youth of Today, all these bands, and then they come out, and then now they're doing a Christianer band. Was there was there a lot of, what was that like? Was there backlash?
When I first joined Shelter and we started really touring around the world, huge backlash.
Okay.
People would literally picket and boycott the shows.
Holy
and saying,
shit.
Religion doesn't belong in hardcore. God doesn't belong in hardcore. Spirituality doesn't belong in hardcore. You know what we would say? Who the freaking hell are you to tell me what belongs in hardcore? Yeah. Hardcore to me always meant, my punk ethos from the time that I was 12 was, you got something to say it. You got something burning in your heart that you want to communicate to people, learn 3 chords, get on the stage and say it. Like, this is your time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I got like a 16-year-old kid telling me that I can't do that. Mm-hmm. It's like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it's true, because a lot of the shit before that was like anarchy in the UK, never on the Bullocks, fuck your parents, fuck the government, get fucked up, and all that shit. Now, that's what I feel what separates that was punk rock, and I feel like hardcore is like, we play just as aggressive. You can slam dance to us and stage dive, but we actually want to fix the world. We want to change it and make it and do something positive. That's what I feel the difference is from punk and hardcore for me. Yeah,
totally. And, so when it was like that in the early, people are like, you guys are in a cult. You guys are like, whatever. And it's so funny because, back then, things like chanting and kirtan and even yoga. Yeah. It wasn't mainstream yet.
No, man.
You know what I mean? So people were like very kind of like, they didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah.
And in 1992 or whatever, like when I joined Shelter, it was like people didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah.
And, nowadays you have like yoga festivals with like kirtan and you get 50,000 people that go. I mean, now it's like mainstream.
Yes.
Same
with veganism. Same thing. Veganism. You guys are on the cuff of everything that's changing the planet. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
It's like back then. It's like if you meditated, you were a freaking weirdo. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Nowadays, it's like people are teaching kids how to meditate in school.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But so those early tours that we did, there was a huge amount of backlash.
Yeah.
But by the time we got on Roadrunner, I think people actually took the time to read the lyrics. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, Ray's just such a great, lyricist. That people read the lyrics and were like, you want to know something? I'm into this.
Yeah.
Like, I agree with this. Like, I can wrap my head around, the messages that he's putting out, even though, like, it's a bunch of guys in, like, wearing orange clothes, shaved heads.
Yes.
I think later on, that kind of like backlash really mellowed out.
Yeah. Did you feel like it was too preachy at times or no?
Maybe in the early days.
Yeah.
But I think later on we kind of learned how to communicate better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like, just like anything, you learn how you get mature and you understand that, like, it's not, that's one thing that kind of like could turn me off about like veganism. When you get like 100%. A fanatic vegan who's just like so judgmental and just like yelling at people, it's like,
it's the worst.
You figure out really quickly, you don't change people's hearts that way.
You don't.
You change people's heart by being like a shining example of what you believe in.
Lead by example. Yes.
And when people see that you're like healthy and happy with what you're doing, people are like intrigued. By that.
100%. There's a fine line between, like, I deal with that on social media too, like being passionate and preachy. Like, I always try to call myself teachy, not preachy. Like, I'm so passionate about my beliefs. When I put them out there, sometimes I don't think first before I write something or post a video of animals. And I'm not doing it to, like, say, shove it down people's throats and be like, yo, this really fucking hurts my feelings. I'm really passionate about living this lifestyle. I'm not trying to, like, tell you to be like me, but it's my personal page and this is my beliefs. It's hard sometimes when your heart thinks. Now, I understand, like with Shelter, you guys came back from India. You guys were super hyped on being Krishnas and everything about that. And so you wanted to spread the word because you thought it was something so positive that really affected you guys. And so some people can take that as like, they're shoving this shit down my face. First of all, you don't have to buy our records. You don't have to listen to our band. You know what I mean? Like, this is what we're about, and you can like it or not. It's like, I don't know, it's hard sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that was cool was the 90s was a freaking weird-ass decade, wasn't it?
It was. It was.
Like,
100%.
It's like you could play the weirdest music. It was almost like being weird was kind of like the standard for the music scene. Even like mainstream music, you had stuff like Nirvana hitting and like even Rancid getting big.
Yeah.
And like, it was almost like anything goes. So it was almost like Shelter came along at the perfect time, especially when we were on Roadrunner, because just kind of like being weird was sort of like, par for the course back then.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, a bunch of Krishnas playing like punk.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's crazy because fucking Mantra blew up because Adam told me these stories, meaning your band, that you guys had MTV hits, you got in South America, you had Bodyguards. It was like a whole different level. Here We Go Again video was getting crazy rotation. That was crazy, man.
Yeah, it was a weird time. It was a really weird time. The band actually got pretty freaking big.
Yeah.
I mean, we toured it. It was weird because when we went to South America, we didn't even know it. But Roadrunner is a big label in South America due to Sepultura.
Yeah,
becoming so. I mean, Sepultura was like a mainstream band down there with a lot of like MTV play for their videos. Also, so when we booked our first tour down there, we didn't even know it. But the Here We Go video was #1 on the MTV Top 20 countdown for the whole 3 weeks before we toured there.
That's crazy, dude.
I mean, you couldn't ask for any better promo. We didn't even know it. Like, I remember we got there. That was funny because Adam was in the band.
Yeah.
We got there, and they had bodyguards for us.
Dude.
And they were like, we're like, what do we need bodyguards for? And they're like, we're taking you to a mall. You have like an in-store record signing appearance at a mall.
Dude.
And you ever do those things and you're like embarrassed because there's like 3 kids there? I mean, when you're coming from the hardcore scene, it's like there's no rock stars. You know what I mean? Like signing records. I was never really comfortable like sitting behind a table and signing records like you're some big rock star. It was like we're a bunch of freaking hardcore kids.
100%.
We're like, we know that's total bullshit. Like the whole point of hardcore is like the stage is yours.
Yep.
It's
you're
like,
equal with everybody.
For the
yeah.
And so I remember even before we played a show, we got there. They got these bodyguards with the earpiece in their ear so they can communicate with each other. And they bring us to this mall, and there's literally like 5,000 screaming kids when we showed up, and like we needed the bodyguards.
Crazy,
we would not have been able to get into the freaking mall without these bodyguards like pushing people out of the way. It was so nuts.
Wow.
And then after we did that, we played on MTV. We got interviewed on MTV probably like 6 times on that tour. Played these huge shows. We get back to America, and our next tour is opening up for No Doubt on a whole arena tour of the country. It was insane.
Oh shit! I remember that.
It was really cool because I don't know if you remember it because Shelter had the weirdest merch table. Do you remember our merch table? It was like chanting beads and like tongue scrapers and like Ayurvedic medicine and like yoga pants.
Yeah, for sure.
And like books. We had all this. We used to go to India. We used to bring all this stuff like deities.
Crazy, man.
We used to bring all this crazy stuff back from India. We'd sell it at our merch table. And I remember when we were in Europe, we played a festival show with No Doubt, and I was sitting behind the merch booth, and Tony Canal comes up to the table and he said, I'll take one of everything that you have.
He's the best, man. Shout out to my man Tony, man. It's awesome.
So I'm loading him up with like books and T-Lock and yoga pants. Like he's taking all this stuff. So me and him started talking. And he's from a Brahmin family. Like he grew up chanting mantras in his house, and like, and he was so intrigued that here's like this punk band, and they're like doing all this stuff. So we immediately became friends, and so he got us on that tour.
It's amazing.
And I mean, dude, it was incredible. No Doubt we're the biggest band in the freaking country.
Yeah.
Like that song, Don't Speak.
Yeah.
That was the biggest song in the whole country, and we're opening up for them.
How were the shows? How were the crowds and stuff?
Dude, Shelter went over great every single night. I mean, we're playing arenas every night, and Shelter was like, you know, Cap was a great front man.
Yeah,
man.
Man.
The band had a lot of energy, and it was just like,
good melodies.
We did great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, it was
amazing,
like, it was a really cool time in my life.
What year was that? 96?
It's probably like 96, something like that. Maybe 96, 97. It was great. I got to be a rock star for a summer.
So that record, so that was the biggest record, probably Mantra, right, for you guys?
Yeah, Mantra was a big record. It was funny too because we were totally skewed when we put out our next record. We put out that record Beyond Planet Earth.
Yep.
Which was just like, you know, we had like a ska song on it.
Was there a rap song on there too?
I mean, it was all different genres. It was
wild.
It was basically a record that we're like, what's big? We're going to do music of what's big, and we're going to become the biggest band in the whole world.
Wow.
Once you get into that mentality, you're doomed as a band.
Agreed.
You know, when you're trying to figure out what's the next big thing and you're going to pander to the crowd instead of just playing the music that moves your heart, you're doomed as a band.
Did you feel guilty? Did you feel part of that? Did you feel like, did you feel like you're just going with the flow, or did you feel weird about that?
Well, you know, I had wrote a bunch of songs on that record that were like way faster. They almost sounded like Descended songs.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, they had all these producers, and like the producers were like, no way, you got to slow this stuff way down. You got to make them all sound like rock songs. You can't put so much distortion on the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it was just like, I kind of trusted these guys, even though I knew that, like, man, this isn't like sounding like Shelter anymore. You know what I mean? But I kind of like trusted the record label, and I trusted that these guys were going to make us the next big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's ironic? The next big thing was punk. You know, fast punk, like Rancid were selling 100,000 records.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Offspring were like these guys didn't know shit.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wish we had put out a record that like we, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We were like a punk band. I wish we just stuck to our sound. We would have been way bigger.
Yeah.
And it was a really like hard lesson to learn that, dude, friggin' follow your heart. Don't listen to these don't try to be big. Don't try to be the friggin', you know, that's what music was always about.
Yeah. 100%. Did you feel like Shelter was going to be, this is it, this is our career, like we actually made it, like when that record blew up? Did you feel like a whole different, like all you've been in so many bands and doing it for so long, had great tours, you inspired so many people, and now you're in Shelter and you got like a hit song, and like it must have been crazy because like you guys really didn't expect that either.
We thought that when Beyond Planet Earth came out that we were going to literally be the biggest band in the world.
Wow.
You know, we thought like one of these songs has to get on the radio, you know, and I mean, that's what the record label's telling us the whole time, that we're recording it. Like, you know, we're almost recording the record in that mindset of thinking like, what's on the radio and how can we get played on the radio?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when you lose your, you know, your whole
passion, focus, everything.
Like, everything.
Yeah. And did any songs hit the radio? Did anything connect?
Not really.
Wow.
Not really. I mean, the record actually still sold over 100,000 copies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, any band that can do that is like...
Hell yeah.
You know, I'm still pretty psyched on that.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you guys know, you guys had a record that was kind of like more mainstream.
Same thing happened to us. We sold 100,000 of our Go record, and we had a big producer, and we got more melodic. And, you know, I'm not, you know, that record, we talked about it on one of these episodes. Like, I didn't write any lyrics on that song. I was moving to California. My mind wasn't there. I kind of let my brother and Rusty take the reins. I didn't write one song on the whole record, me nor Adam or Todd Friend. I kind of went with the flow, kind of like you did. And like we tried to do something different, and it was still the same band and the same people, but a bigger producer and more like, you know, candy coated kind of record. And I wish that it was, no disrespect to the guy who produced it, but I feel like Chad Chad Gilbert, who did our later records, could have did just as good job because those songs stand out in our set list. But at that time, I was just like in a different headspace. I wasn't really focused, and we were so burnt on touring on the record before that for like over a year. I don't know, I just went with the flow, kind of like you, and who knows. But yeah, I mean, you live and you learn. It was a good experience being on a major label. We tried it,
You live and you learn, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes you learn. Sometimes you learn the hard lessons. It's all part of life.
Yeah, for sure. It's part of our career. We did it. And luckily after that, we had 7 years of no records and then put out Nothing to Prove, and that really connected. We're lucky that kids actually cared 7 years later, and we came on Bridge 9, so that was really, really lucky, But yeah, man.
Yeah, it's cool. Dude, we've had a charmed life, man.
For sure, man.
We can't complain.
We're so lucky. There's no reason that I don't understand anybody could be doing what they love and be upset. There's no way woulda, coulda, shoulda bullshit. If you're like playing music for a living, not just for not completely for your full income, you're doing other things. Like you play music, you're a yoga instructor, yogi, and you kill it because that's your passion. You do what you love every day. Like we're fucking so lucky, and we worked hard to get there. And so I feel like there's no reason not to be happy unless you're fucking super sick or something's wrong with your family, or you know what I mean? Like, so lucky, man.
You know what? And I really have the hardcore scene to thank for it, for giving me the confidence to just live life on my own terms.
Yeah, me too, man.
And I wouldn't have it any. I meet I meet some kids from my high school sometimes that are like, I went to this Westchester, way upper middle class, preppy high school. Every other car in the parking lot's like a BMW or a Mercedes.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these kids that I went to high school now are super rich.
Wow.
And so I was walking in New York City, and I met this one kid that I went to high school with. And I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm a lawyer or something, and I work for this huge law firm." And he was like, telling me all this stuff. And I was like, "Oh yeah." And he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm teaching yoga, really into yoga." And I tell you, I was almost like embarrassed because here's this guy, like, whatever. I make a modest living teaching yoga, but I love it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like I'm actually helping people, and I take my job as like a service.
Yeah, man.
And I mean that makes all the difference in the world.
100%.
And this guy starts telling me, man, I feel like my whole life is wasted. I hate my job. I make a ton of money. I buy a bunch of shit that doesn't make me happy. He's just like, man, you just kind of like figured it out.
Yeah, man.
And it's true.
It's true.
There's so many people these days that just go to college, they learn a trade that makes them money, but doesn't make them happy. And you see a bunch of rich people that are miserable.
100%.
Like who wants to be like that?
Yeah, I know a lot like that actually, and it's crazy because it's like people always say like, what do you base success on being in a band? Well, it's longevity, it's inspiring people, and actually doing what I love. It's like not about record sales and MTV. All that would have been great. It would have been awesome if that happened. We had a couple plays here and there, but it wasn't about that. Like you said, it was the music and the message and doing something fun with your friends, and it turned out to be a career. And yeah, like it'd be great to have $1 million, but would I be? I like my life that I still hustle and I'm happy and I'm healthy. I own a house. I get to travel and do music and do all this stuff, and it's like the grass isn't always greener. I know a lot of fucking millionaire people who are not happy, man. People are just, money doesn't fix anything, dude. It like so lucky.
And it's funny too, because all this yoga philosophy that I studied for years in ashrams, it really comes out to play. Mm-hmm. Dude, materialism is not going to make anybody happy.
Yeah.
We're not materialistic people. We're actually spiritual people.
Yeah.
What makes you happy is how much love that you have in your heart,
100%,
and how much love that you extend to other people.
Yep.
It's like it's actually a super easy formula, but our culture doesn't move in that direction.
Everybody's super selfish.
So
yeah.
So thankfully, hardcore kind of like when you're a punk rocker and you're growing up with a lot of stuff, you really become aloof to like public opinion and just the way, and you sort of have this kind of like, it's almost like a disdain for the mainstream. What to speak of, how people are always trying to keep up with the mainstream. We come from a mindset where like the mainstream sucks. We're going to do the opposite.
Yeah.
And
100%.
And And I tell you, in this kind of like day and age where things are like hyper materialistic, and at least in America, you know, it's a kind of like, you know, that I had like the courage and the strength to kind of like move in my own direction.
Yeah.
It really like, it made all the difference in my life. I'm so grateful to, you know, this music scene and all the bands.
Yeah,
and
man.
even like bands like the Dead Kennedys and, you know, just all these bands that I grew up listening to that like were so kind of like against mainstream culture. And they actually pointed out all the problems of like cookie cutter mainstream culture. And then I didn't want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, whatever. I mean, I could have went to college. I could have like, you know, done great in college and got some like business degree and went into business just like my dad. My dad made a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want that life.
Yeah. Do you feel like all those values and stuff that you've gotten your whole life from punk rock and hardcore you use as a father and instill in your children?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I always tried to like, you know, teach my kids that. And, you know, I never, you know, my dad put so much pressure on me.
Yeah.
You know, this music scene is a waste of time. You're going to throw your life away. You got to go to college. You got to buckle down. You got to just get a job. And, you know, that's going to be your life. It's like, dude, I'm looking at my dad. I'm like, I'm seeing you do that.
Yes.
And you don't seem very happy. So why am I going to do that?
Yeah, totally. I know, it's just the American way. So, it's just like you do that, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy, man. Eat these 4 food groups. Milk does the body good. Eat your milk, eat your meat, eat your breads, eat all this stuff, and go to college and get married and have kids and get a job and just all that shit, man.
Yeah. You know, I always try to tell my kids, you know, follow your heart.
Yep.
You know, don't think so much about making money, but think of something that first of all that you're going to be very, very passionate about.
Yep.
And it's going to wake you up in the morning and you're going to be glad to do it.
Oh yeah.
And try to find something that you can make money at that actually helps people and serves people and inspires people.
Yep.
And if you can do that, you know, you don't work a day in your life because your work doesn't seem like your work. Your work seems like, you know, fun.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, your work becomes something that you want to do as opposed to something that like. I mean, I've done it, dude. I've done it. I remember when my kids were first born, and like I stopped doing music, and I just got like, you know, some just crappy jobs to get a paycheck. And dude, it's no way to freaking live your life.
Yeah.
Sitting there staring at the clock, waiting for the freaking day to be over, waiting for Friday to come around, just because it's like, it's no way to live your life, man.
No. What do you think it was with me and you and other people that we know that, like I said, like we both heard Minor Threat, and we decided from that day on, whatever, that you know, there's people out there like us, and we're going to stick to our convictions our whole entire life through everything, through every type of struggle and ups and downs and being married and having kids and all that. That we still stayed straight edge and vegetarian and vegan. To me, it just seems like a no-brainer. It's just easy because I know how animals are treated. I know how drugs affect people. I don't know why other people can't see that. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I feel like there's so many followers and shit, but I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
I try not to concern myself about that too much.
Yeah.
I just try to live my life, you know, the way that I want to live it.
Yeah.
I actually try to be very, you know, I try to be very strict with myself. And I try to be very tolerant with other people.
Yeah. Have patience and shit too.
You know, it's like, and I try to influence other people as much as I can.
Man. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, that's a big part of my music. And even it's like a big part of the way that I teach yoga. Yeah. And it's funny too, because people appreciate that. You know, if you can actually connect with somebody and you can even in a little bit change their life in a better way. Yeah. People are so appreciative of it. It's true. And really that's the reward for me. It's not the monetary award. Yeah. But I mean, even like in music today, I mean, we weren't the biggest band. We never had a gold record. We never had like, you know, you're never going to open up like freaking MTV book and see Picture Youth Today in there.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had this like huge effect on a lot of people.
Yeah, man.
And to me, I'll take that over like having some like hit pop song that
100%.
like people can't remember in 10 years anyway.
Yeah, man. It's a massive impact
way more important.
you guys had on the world, and like had a huge impact on me as a kid. Still do to this day, and I'm honored to call you my friend. And also like everything you've done with your life and all that, being a great dad. I see all the stuff of you and your kids, and just like you balance everything too, man. It's hard. It's hard. It's not easy being a parent. It's not easy being a musician and traveling, going back and forth, leaving your family. But it seemed to work out, and it's because I don't know. I feel like we live it, and it's like we're lucky we still get to live it. And I don't know. So I appreciate everything you've done for me with all the bands you've been in. I can't even name all the bands again, but although I'm going to check out the Young Republicans. I haven't really heard them before. Is there any music anywhere?
Some guy, the demo was lost for years.
Yeah.
And then some guy, one of the guys from the Anthrax found it in like a shoebox.
Damn.
In his closet. And some guy actually put it out on vinyl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Dude,
That's crazy.
I would send you a copy. I don't even think I have a copy myself. I don't have any of my own stuff. I don't have any of my own records.
Damn.
I don't have any like flyers or like posters or anything. I usually just don't keep that stuff around.
You have the
like
memories,
travel.
man. Obviously, we just talked about you have the memories. You lived it. So.
Yeah.
My final question usually ask people is, but I already know the answer. Are you optimistic or pessimistic? But I already know that. I already know what you are. I knew that from the jump anyway. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm always optimistic.
Yeah, man.
Always.
Yeah.
Gotta keep the PMA, brother.
Hell yeah, man. It's my wife's like I'm a realist. What are you gonna say?
She's a realist, she said?
My wife's like, I'm a realist. You're optimist, I'm a realist. I mean, people have their own way they look at life and shit like that. It's kind of hard sometimes, especially what's happening in the world and the president, the government. I kind of try to live in my PMA bubble, but I also watch the news and Vice and all that stuff and keep up what's happening with the government and all that stuff and try not to get down like a dark hole, but especially nowadays,
Yeah. I mean, when you get a little perspective, though, you can see that things are actually changing for the better.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting, man. The world's changing fast too. So many conscious people. So even like the millennials, all those kids are out there protesting and trying to make differences, and it's great to see people out there using their voices, such young kids, and it's pretty awesome.
Dude, I have a ton of faith in like the younger generation that's coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, these kids are freaking in their own terms. These kids are like super woke. They're super spiritual.
Yeah.
They want something different. They kind of understand that, all this kind of blatant materialism that's been shoved down their throat isn't going to make them happy.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what these kids are going to do. I'm really psyched on them.
Yeah. Me too. It's exciting. My son's in a good spot. He's woke, as the kids say, and he's in a good magnet program, music school, and he's out there doing things positive. And yeah, I mean, I think our kids, like our kids and kids who have parents like us who aren't the typical kind of parents, you know what I mean? I feel like it's awesome. I'm excited to see what happens to our kids and what they do in the world,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Toby, man, I just wanted to say, I feel like we're real kindred spirits. We're like cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's great, all the stuff you're doing. I think it's so cool that you go to these schools and
thank you.
Tell these kids that there's an alternative to getting drunk. I mean, you know how it is when you go to school. Sometimes you don't even know there's an alternative.
No, you don't.
You need somebody to let them know there's a freaking better way.
Yeah, man.
So mad respect for that.
Thank you. And that's inspired by you, man. So thank you.
All right, just paying it forward. All the bands that inspired me.
Yeah, man, that's how we do it. It's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you, Porcell. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you being on here. Appreciate you sharing your story with me and us and the world, whoever's listening. All you contributed to music, for the animals, for the planet, everything, man. I appreciate it, man.
All right, thanks, brother.
Thank you. Great talking to you, bro.
All right, man. Take care.
Bye. So Porcell, we're gonna do a part 2. I got Porcell back on the phone. I'm gonna do a part 2 with him soon, but I have to go to Soul Cycle because I'm a maniac. But before I forget this question, I asked Richie this question. I want to know what your answer is. I was told that one time when you guys used to work out, you guys would be doing reps of weights, and you would spell out like STR and spell out straight edge during your reps. Is that true or false?
100% completely true.
Oh, that's amazing. Richie said he didn't remember doing that. That's awesome.
Me and Steve Reddy used to work out at the same gym.
Uh-huh.
And he basically taught me the Maha Mantra while we worked out also.
Sick. But you spelled out like straight edge though in your reps, right? That's so hard.
Yeah.
Fuck, I feel like I'm a Miss Soul Cycle now by asking you more questions. But you guys were in such good shape too, and that was also part of also being straight edge is like the health, the body, the mind. But you guys were jacked. Like you guys weren't like some scrawny ass like little straight edge vegan guys too. I always thought that was awesome, you know?
Yeah, we were unabashedly like into health and fitness.
But you weren't jocks. Like Richie's like, I didn't like jocks. We didn't play sports, yeah.
We weren't jocks.
Yeah.
But we were, the whole punk thing was like live fast, die young, drink yourself into a stupor. And we wanted to be the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So we kind of like really boldly went out and said, hey, this is what we're into.
Yeah.
We do push-ups before the shows.
And Richie said that he went on record saying to the day he dies, he's the first one to start wearing an X watch and wear a pair of classic high top Vans in New York.
The first time I saw him, he was wearing those high top Vans. I think Walter was the first one to have that watch, though.
Oh shit! Okay, all right. But how about you?
Walter was the first one to have that thing.
Okay,
I could be wrong.
And then also the first time I saw because everybody's wearing boots back then, Docs and shaved heads. You guys are rocking high top Jordans and Blazers and Uptowns, and you guys are rocking super high top Nikes, and that's what I was like. I love that whole look back then. So I think you guys brought that into the scene.
Yeah, they were so much more comfortable than boots.
Yeah.
You don't want to clot around in a freaking pair of combat boots all the time.
Yeah.
It sucks.
But you guys have the athletic, just the whole style too. I'm gonna have to call you back, but later. But the varsity jackets and the champion hoodies, which are fucking so massive right now. My son's like, I want a champion hoodie. Back then they were super thick when they first came out. Just that whole look was so opposite of the leather jackets and the spikes and the boots and the ripped up jeans. It was more like we're clean cut American kids. We're fucking pure, all that,
Yeah, we wanted to have our own look.
Yeah.
Everybody else was super punk rock.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a statement against that whole philosophy of the old mentality of punk is dress to shock, get fucked up.
Yeah.
This is how we live outside of the mainstream.
Yeah.
Bitch, that is the mainstream.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Everybody's going out, getting drunk and getting in fights.
Yeah.
You are mainstream doing that.
Yeah.
So we want to do something different.
Yeah, and I love that you guys look like normal, American kids, but you didn't eat meat or eat fucking drink or do drugs, but you guys look like you guys were athletic dudes, which you were. You were healthy kids, but the style, the high tops and all that shit, it was such a sick. It wasn't. I know wasn't for the fashion. That's just what you guys wore, but it's just something so new and fresh in the scene,
I mean, dude, do you know what it was like to walk into CBGB's at a matinee in 1985 with a friggin' varsity jacket on? You could be killed for that. Yeah. It's just like a normal crew cut and a varsity jacket.
Yeah, bleached hair and shit. Yeah.
I'd get dudes with triple mohawks looking like they want to kill me.
Mm-hmm. What's crazy about that was you guys being punk in the punk scene. We're not dressing like everybody else, and we still have the same mentality, and it's crazy.
Yeah, in a way, it was more punk than punk.
Yeah, it was, because it's this is us, this is our look. We're still, that's fucking. Yeah, I forgot to ask you that question. It's super important. You have the varsities, the whole look, the X watches, the tight beads on the neck, the cut shirts at the bottom that kind of rolled up, the canvas belts. camouflage pants, fucking Vans, low tops, all that shit. Because nobody's really rocking Vans in the scene. It was a West Coast thing, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
And then maybe guys started.
It was a good.
Go ahead.
It was a good look.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool when like a band rolls in to like a club.
Yeah.
And they all kind of have a look to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's something powerful about that.
100%. You knew who you guys were. It was like you guys were fucking. Yeah, man. It was a crew. It was awesome. It was like, but it was a positive thing. It wasn't a violent thing. It was like, this is us. This is what we represent, and you can spot us a mile away and shit. You know.
Yeah, it was almost like, hey, this is who we are. We're not comfortable with like a bunch of mohawks and freaking safety pins.
Yeah,
that wasn't our scene. We were trying to do something new.
Yeah. I love that, man. Okay, we're going to get a part 2 next week, people listening, but I had to call back and ask that question about the lifting weights. Also the Jordans, because I remember like first time I saw Jordans in punk rock was like Steve Cabb and the Bones Brigade videos. This guy started rocking Air Jordans because that was like mostly in hip hop and in basketball. But then I saw like, the Bones Brigade rocking them in one of their videos, like skating in high top Air Force Ones, and Air Jordan Ones, AJKOs. And then you guys started rocking the Jordans in hardcore. It was like so awesome, man.
Yeah, I think Capo's wearing the Jordans on the cover of Break Down the Walls, right?
Yeah.
Was that the Jordans?
Yeah, man.
That was right when those red, white, and black ones came out.
Yeah.
So cool looking, right?
Yeah, and then you guys started rocking. I remember like the first they were called. You're not gonna know what I'm talking about because I'm a total sneaker freak. But the Air Max 1 BWs, they were like a violet and black and white, and those are the first synthetic Nikes that came out. Everybody started when they were vegan. They started rocking. You guys started rocking those Nikes that was synthetic back then too when they first came out. That was awesome.
Yeah, remember when those? Do you remember when Air Revolutions came out?
Mm-hmm.
Nike Air Revolution.
Yeah,
they're like the highest high top like ever made. we saw those things. We're like, oh my god, it's like a dream come true sneaker.
Because you guys jumped around like you need ankle support.
And we freaking all got them. We all got them. Those Air Revolutions came out like the whole freaking straight edge scene in New York got them. It was so funny.
It's amazing.
Great sneaker.
Yeah, man. All you guys always rep Nike and Champion, all that shit, and fucking X watch. Put that watch on the map too, man. That was crazy. It was just perfect timing for that too. In like '88, I think maybe it came out.
The Champion thing came out because we used to play Buffalo, and right outside of Buffalo was a Champion outlet. So every time we played Buffalo, we would go there, and you get those like reverse weave, really thick Champions ones there, and they were super cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So we would just go there and we would just buy like a ton of those sweatshirts.
Wow.
They were so thick that even in the winter, you could just wear 2 of those instead of a jacket.
That's awesome. That's amazing, man.
Yeah, those things were great.
Fuck, man. All right, we're gonna get back to it. I'm gonna go do my soul cycle, but I'm gonna hit you with a part 2 next week because I know you have more great stories. I just told Adam how psyched I was on our interview, and it's my favorite one so far. And I appreciate your time and all your stories, Porcell. I'm gonna hit you back though for sure.
All right, cool. We'll get into the whole youth crew thing next time.
So down. Thank you, bro.
All right, brother.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Okay,
Take
bye.
care, man.
Bye. Hey guys, thanks for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet to this podcast, please do that. And whatever platform you are listening to this on, I'm glad you found me. You can rate me and review me on there also. So thank you guys sincerely for the support. I cannot wait for you guys to do the next one.